She planned the whole wedding, then removed her best friend as MOH 10 minutes before walking down the aisle. 10 minutes. 10 minutes before her best friend was supposed to walk down the aisle as maid of honor, she found out she no longer was. Not privately, not gently, not with any kind of warning. Right there, in front of everyone, moments before the ceremony began. That alone should tell you everything you need to know about how this friendship had been running for a while now. And the worst part is, this was not a surprise that came out of nowhere. This had been building for months. The signs were there. The distance was growing. Something was off and she knew it. She had even asked directly whether anything had changed and been told no, everything is fine, nothing has changed. She believed that. She trusted her best friend. And that trust is exactly what made this moment so devastating. Let us go back to where this all actually started, because the wedding day was not the beginning of the story. It was just where the story finally showed its true face. 3 months before the wedding, her best friend asked her to be the maid of honor. Short notice, yes, but she stepped up immediately and without hesitation. There was no pause, no weighing of pros and cons, no quiet resentment about the timeline. She said yes because this was her best friend, and when your best friend needs you, the answer is already decided before the question finishes leaving their mouth. That is what you do for someone you genuinely love and want to show up for. You do not wait to feel ready. You just show up. From the very beginning she was all in. She took on the responsibilities, she made sacrifices, and she poured herself into the role with everything she had. You have to picture what that actually looks like in practice. It means late-night texts going unanswered while she is still planning. It means budgeting money she may not have had spare. It means reorganizing her own life around someone else's milestone and doing it gladly, because she believed this was mutual, because she believed this friendship was the kind where both people would do the same for each other without being asked. One of the first big moments was the bachelorette party, and already the cracks were forming beneath the surface. Scheduling was a nightmare because the bride had an incredibly packed calendar. The only date that worked for everyone required her to miss a significant family event of her own. A real event. Something that mattered to her personally, the kind of moment you do not get back. And she still chose to go, still planned the whole thing, still paid for the accessories and the bride's dinner, because she believed that was what a maid of honor does. She chose her best friend over herself. And she probably did it without a single complaint, without making the bride feel guilty, because that is what people who love generously tend to do. They absorb the cost quietly so the other person never has to see it. Now let us talk about the sister, because you cannot tell this story without her. Right from the start, the sister had a problem. Nobody seemed to know exactly what the problem was, because she refused to talk about it. Multiple people asked her directly and she would not say a word. Our narrator even reached out personally with a text, genuinely trying to open the door and address whatever tension was sitting between them. She probably wrote and rewrote that message a few times, trying to strike the right tone, wanting to be warm without being confrontational, wanting to fix something she had not even caused. Radio silence. Not even a response. Not a short reply, not an emoji, nothing. The people closest to the situation all landed on the same conclusion without much debate. The sister was jealous. Plain and simple. She was jealous of how close the bride and her best friend were, jealous of the intimacy and history between them, jealous of the way someone outside the family had clearly claimed a place that felt, to her, like it should belong to blood. And that jealousy had nowhere to go except outward. Here is what gets me. Instead of the bride sitting her sister down and saying, "This is my friend, this is my wedding, you need to handle your feelings," she did the opposite. She slowly started managing around the sister's jealousy by managing her best friend out of the picture. Little by little. Quietly. Without ever saying a word about what was actually happening. Every small exclusion was deniable. Every slight could be explained away. And that is exactly how cowardice operates when it wants to avoid accountability. It does not announce itself. It just gradually rearranges the room until one day you look up and realize you are standing outside of it. After the bachelorette party, something shifted noticeably. She was being included less. Kept at a distance. Conversations that once would have included her naturally were happening without her. She probably felt it the way you feel a draft before you can identify where it is coming from, that low persistent sense that something is wrong that you keep trying to talk yourself out of because you want to be wrong. When she brought it up and asked directly whether she was still the maid of honor, she was told yes, absolutely, nothing has changed. The explanation given for why she was being left out was that there simply was not much left to do. Which, by the way, directly contradicted the bride's own mother saying how stressed she was about everything still on the to-do list. Someone was not being straight with her, and it was not the mother. What she did not know, but probably felt in her gut, was that decisions were already being made around her rather than with her. Her role was being quietly hollowed out like a structure that looks solid from the outside but has had everything removed from within. The title stayed in place long enough to keep her working and contributing, but the actual position was being handed over in slow motion to the sister who had never once bothered to engage with her like a grown adult. She was still being called the maid of honor. She was still operating as if she were the maid of honor. All the while, behind the scenes, that was no longer true in any meaningful sense. On the wedding day itself, the atmosphere was completely different. The energy was off in a way that is hard to articulate but impossible to miss when you are in the middle of it. The bridesmaids, including the sister, barely spoke to her. There was no warmth, no pulling her into conversations, no sense that she belonged to the group. While everyone else gathered in the bridal suite getting ready and spending time together before the ceremony, sharing that irreplaceable, intimate pre-wedding energy, she was out decorating and helping the wedding planner. Now to be fair, the other bridesmaids had been doing setup before she arrived, and she took over the final 4 hours of preparation. She did not complain about that. She was not there looking for a break or to take photos and sip mimosas. She genuinely believed she was fulfilling her role in the way the role needed to be fulfilled, and she threw herself into it with the same wholehearted commitment she had shown from the beginning. But here is the thing. While she was out there working, while she was setting up tables and organizing the venue and doing the unglamorous behind-the-scenes labor, the group was in that suite together. Laughing, getting ready, taking pictures, doing each other's hair, sharing the experience that bonds a bridal party in ways that last for years. She was excluded from that without being told she was excluded. She thought she was being a team player. She thought she was contributing in the most practical and necessary way. She had no idea she was already on the outside, pressing her hands against glass she could not see. Then it happened. 10 minutes before the ceremony. No rehearsal had taken place, so the wedding party was scrambling to figure out the processional order right there on the spot, in a hallway or a foyer, surrounded by the nervous energy of a ceremony about to begin. And that is when she learned the truth. She would not be walking with the best man. She would not be standing in the maid of honor position at the altar. The other sister had been given that spot. The moment she heard it, whatever she had been feeling in the weeks before must have crystallized instantly into something clear and cold and undeniable. The reason offered was that the sister's dress was shorter and it would look better for her to stand next to the bride. That was the explanation. A dress length. After months of being the one doing all the work, after sacrificing her family event and spending her own money and pouring her energy into every detail, the official reason she was being replaced was the hemline of someone else's dress. Here is the part that makes that reason fall completely apart. They had known about the sister's dress for over a month. If dress length was genuinely the issue, that conversation could have happened at any point during those 30-something days before the wedding. It could have been a gentle phone call, a quick message, a brief and honest moment between two people who were supposed to be best friends. It never came up. Not once. Because dress length was never the actual reason. It was a convenient excuse invented in the moment to make an ugly, premeditated decision sound logistical instead of personal. Instead, she was placed second in the procession, told by the bride's mother while the bride stood there and said nothing. Not a word. Not a look. Not even the dignity of delivering the news herself. She let her mother do it and she stood there silent, which tells you everything about where her courage was that day. And during photos, both sisters made sure she was never standing next to the bride. There is not a single photograph from that day that would tell you she was the maid of honor, because every photo was arranged to erase that reality. That is not accidental. That requires active, deliberate effort. Someone had to keep track of where she was standing. Someone had to keep redirecting the frame. That is not an oversight. That is a coordinated erasure. She did something remarkable in that moment. She said nothing. She smiled. She participated. She held herself together through the ceremony and through part of the reception, carrying the full weight of what had just happened while performing the role of someone who was fine. She refused to make a scene on her best friend's wedding day even though her best friend had just publicly humiliated her in front of every person they both knew. That level of grace under that kind of pain is not small. That is enormous. Most people could not have done it. Most people would not have been expected to. And then she could not hold it anymore. The tears came and she had to leave. Because when you have been betrayed that deeply by someone you love, your body eventually stops cooperating with the performance of being okay. The grief has to go somewhere and eventually it finds the door on its own. She spent close to $1,000 on this friendship. The bachelorette party, the dress, the gift, the other associated costs that accumulate across months of showing up. And while money is not the core issue here, it matters because it represents the extent to which she invested herself based on a lie. She spent that money because she believed she was the maid of honor. She made sacrifices because she believed her role was real and valued and seen. She was allowed to keep believing that right up until 10 minutes before the ceremony because it was useful to let her believe it. The belief kept her working. The belief kept her from asking the harder questions. And the moment her usefulness was no longer needed, the belief was discarded along with everything else. That is not an accident or a last-minute decision. That is someone being used. When she got home and started reading through comments from people who heard her story, she admitted something honest and quietly heartbreaking. She had posted hoping someone would tell her she was overreacting. She wanted someone to give her a reason to excuse her best friend's behavior, to find the angle that made it okay, to help her justify staying in this friendship without having to confront what had actually happened. She wanted permission to look away from what she already knew. And instead, every single person confirmed what she already knew deep down. She had been treated badly. She was not wrong to feel what she felt. And sometimes the most painful thing is not the wound itself but the moment the last exit you were hoping for closes in front of you. Now the bride is on her honeymoon, and she is sitting with a decision she did not ask to have to make. Here is where I land on this, and I feel pretty clear about it. What happened at that wedding was not a misunderstanding. It was not a stressful moment gone sideways. It was the result of a sustained pattern of dishonesty and cowardice from someone who was supposed to be her closest friend. The bride knew the sister had a problem. She knew that problem was not going away. And rather than address it directly or have an honest conversation with her best friend about how things were changing, she kept her in place, kept her working, kept her emotionally invested, and then flipped the script at the last possible second when it was too late to do anything about it. The cruelest part is the timing. Not because the bride ran out of time to tell her, but because waiting until 10 minutes before the ceremony meant she had no room to react, no space to process, no option but to smile and absorb it. That timing was protective. Protective of the wedding, of the day, of the photos, of the piece. It was not protective of her. She deserves a friend who would have picked up the phone weeks ago and said, "Look, things are getting complicated with my sister and I need to talk to you honestly about where we are." That is what a real friendship looks like. What she got instead was someone who managed her like a problem to be contained. Someone who took everything she had to give and handed the recognition to someone else without ever giving her the dignity of the truth. When the bride comes back from her honeymoon, a conversation may or may not happen. But regardless of how that conversation goes, the friendship has already told her what it is. Not through one bad day, but through months of quiet choices that all pointed in the same direction. She was the labor. The sister was the love. And her best friend let that be true without ever saying a word. My pregnant girlfriend just admitted she lied about her age for our entire relationship, and now I question everything. She was talking to her mom on speakerphone, the way people do when they want the whole room to hear half a conversation, and right in the middle of it her mom said something that stopped him cold. 23. Not 25. Not 26. 23. And in that one word, a year of his life rearranged itself entirely. He did not react immediately. He sat there quietly, waiting for her to get off the phone, turning that number over in his head like a coin he was not sure was real. 23. When they met she had told him she was 25. He was 30 at the time. They had just celebrated what she called her 26th birthday. He had been at that birthday. He had bought a gift, made a reservation, stood across a table from her with a candle between them and believed completely in the night they were having. And none of it was real. So let us set the scene properly, because the details here matter a lot. They met a little over a year ago. He was 30, she said she was 25. They built a relationship, the slow and genuine kind, the kind where you start leaving things at each other's apartments and you stop performing and start just being. They grew comfortable enough to stop using condoms and rely solely on her birth control. Then she got pregnant, found out about a month ago, and waited nearly 3 weeks before telling him, saying she was scared of how he would react. That is already a painful and significant amount of withheld information sitting in one relationship. And then came the phone call. When she got off the phone and he asked her directly about what her mom had said, she could not deny it. Her own mother does not get her daughter's age wrong by 3 full years. There is no version of that being an honest mistake, no reasonable explanation where a woman misremembers how old her child is. She looked caught, because she was caught, the way people look when the exact thing they were afraid of finally arrives and there is simply nowhere left to go. And then she admitted it. She was 23. She had been 22 when they met. The birthday they celebrated together as her 26th was actually her 23rd. I mean, wow. Just wow. He says he sat there staring at her for the longest time without knowing what to say, and honestly that sounds about right. Because what do you say in that moment? The air in the room must have felt completely different. The person sitting across from him was the same person, the same face, the same hands, the same voice he had grown so used to hearing, and yet something fundamental had just shifted in a way that could not be unshifted. There is no clean response to that. There is no sentence that captures the experience of realizing that a foundational piece of your relationship was constructed on a lie from day one. Her explanation was that she had found out his age first and assumed he would not take her seriously if he knew she was 22. And here is the uncomfortable part. She was probably right about that. He admits as much himself. He says he likely would not have entered into a real relationship with a 22-year-old. A casual thing maybe, but not something serious, not something he would have invested in the way he did. She knew that. She understood how he thought before he had any idea who she really was, and she used that understanding to engineer the conditions under which he would fall for her. She made a calculated decision before their relationship even began, while he was still just a stranger she had recently met. And she maintained that decision, actively and without hesitation, for over a year. That is not a slip. That is not an embarrassing omission. That is a sustained, deliberate construction of a false identity, kept alive by ongoing choices. She changed details about her life to make the lie hold together. References to her college years, her early 20s, the timeline of her own history, all of it had to be carefully managed. She let them celebrate a fake birthday. She referred to it as her 26th birthday, out loud, with warmth in her voice, while looking him in the eye across that candle. Every time the subject of her age or her past came up, she had to steer carefully around the truth, choosing each word with quiet precision while he sat there trusting her completely. That kind of lying does not happen passively. It takes sustained mental work. It takes ongoing effort across dozens of conversations, hundreds of small moments. And it means that every time she had the opportunity to tell the truth and chose not to, she made that active choice again, deliberately, one more time. Now layer the pregnancy on top of all of that and you start to understand why he is feeling the way he is. Because the pregnancy alone, at 1 year in, not living together, uncertain about the future, that is already a significant source of stress and fear for any person. He is being honest about that too. He says he is not sure they are in the right place to bring a child into this. He feels the weight of it pressing down on him constantly. But he is also being clear that he intends to take responsibility, that he is not looking to run from it. He is a man sitting inside a frightening situation trying very hard to respond to it with integrity. But then the age lie lands directly on top of all of that fear, and suddenly the pregnancy looks different too. Not because he is certain something sinister happened, but because trust has been broken, and once trust breaks, your mind starts quietly reviewing everything it previously accepted without question. He had no reason to doubt that she was on birth control when she got pregnant. He had seen it. He had physical evidence of it. And yet now, despite all of that, the doubt is there, unwelcome and persistent. Not because the evidence changed, but because he found out she is capable of lying to him across a long stretch of time without ever flinching, without ever cracking, without giving him even a single honest moment in which he could have chosen differently. And that is the real damage a lie like this does. It does not just affect the thing it was about. It contaminates everything around it. He keeps saying he still likes who she is. That knowing her real age does not change what actually attracts him to her or what he values about her. He does not want to be the kind of person who suddenly withdraws simply because a number is different than he thought. And that instinct is decent, it really is. But there is a difference between not caring that she is 23 and not caring that she lied to him for over a year while building a life with him. Those are two completely separate things, and he has every right to hold them separately and grieve them separately. She keeps apologizing. She says she loves him. She says she does not want to lose him. She is also, it should be noted, pregnant and scared, aware that she is carrying a child and that the ground beneath this relationship just shifted in a major way because of something she did. The apologies are real, probably. The fear of losing him is definitely real. But apologies do not automatically rebuild trust. They are a starting point, not an end point. Trust has to be earned back through consistent behavior, through transparency over time, through proving by action that the person she is right now is different from the person who made that first choice to lie. And right now they are standing at the very beginning of what that long process would actually require. Here is where I come down on this. The lie itself, the age thing, is not the worst lie someone could tell in a relationship. It does not come close to the worst. And if that were the only issue on the table, the path forward would be a hard but manageable conversation about honesty and what they both need going forward. But that is not the only thing on the table. There is a pregnancy. There is a partner who withheld that information for weeks after finding out, sitting with that knowledge alone while he walked through his days completely unaware. There is the ongoing question of whether someone who was willing to construct and maintain a false identity for over a year is someone whose version of events you can fully rely on when the stakes are highest. He is not overreacting. He is not being dramatic. He is a 31-year-old man who just found out that the woman he has been building something real with has been lying to him since before they even started. And now that same woman is carrying his child. The trust question is not paranoia. It is the only rational response to the situation he is actually in. The work to rebuild that trust has to start with her showing, not just saying, that she understands what she actually took from him when she made that choice. His ability to know the person he was falling for. His ability to make a fully informed decision about the relationship he was entering. Those things cannot be given back. They can only be accounted for, honestly and with real humility, over a long period of time. Drop a comment below telling me which story hit you harder, because honestly both of these left me speechless. And if you made it this far, a like and subscribe would mean the world.